Good morning, everybody. How are you? I don't believe you. Good morning, everyone. How are you? Listen, if I could wake up early to be here on time, you better pretend you're happy to see me. I'm happy to see everybody as well. And my job is not to welcome everyone, even though I'm going to. So, welcome. I hope you've been downstairs for a cup of coffee. I have it on good authority that we're going to be well fed today. So there are several occasions, if you did miss your coffee this morning, where we will go out a little bit later on, we'll be fed, and then again, later on again, we're going to be fed. So at least the hospitality side is going to be super perfect. Welcome to this beautiful morning. Pretoria forgot about spring, and we only have summer and winter this year. And before I welcome Professor Sunil Maharaj, who's our Deputy Vice Principal for Research, Innovation and Postgraduate Education, let me quickly do the housekeeping, because while we are while we are running the program, don't put your hand up and ask me if you can please go and use the bathroom. I want you to know where it is. So the exit to my right, if you just do an immediate right again and then another immediate right, but the signs are very clear, that's where the bathrooms are. And then I'd just like to inform you where your tea time is going to be held. When you go through the door that you entered in and you turn left and you go down the stairs, that's the Normalsaal. Does Normalsaal mean normal hall? The university was not creative. The normal hall, I think we're in the abnormal hall. So the normal hall is where we will then have our refreshments. There is also water outside in the foyer here. There are ushers who will be here the whole day to show you the way, so please don't hesitate to ask. And then later on again, when we have our lunch, I think we are also going to have our lunch there in the normal hall. Please feel free to take notes. I'm sure there'll be an opportunity for networking and asking of questions later on. And without further ado, I'm going to ask our Vice Principal to please come and give everybody a word of welcome.
Our program director, good morning colleagues and distinguished guests, and our keynote speaker, and of course the various panelists this morning. I'm not sure if we're online, but if there's any online guests, welcome as well. Of course, I'd like to welcome our students, our researchers, our guests from other universities, and people from our national system of innovation. Of course, a warm welcome to University of Pretoria and our 2023 Research Week. It's one of our flagship events under our research, innovation, and postgraduate education activities. And of course, I'm sure this week-long activities has been quite inspirational and encouraging and informative. And that program director, we thought more people will be here this morning. Maybe they're too tired from the last 3 days. The week-long activities build on what we had in 2022 as part of our UP Postgrad Research Day, which was just one day. And of course, this year, I think it's a week. Maybe from one day to a week is a big transition. Starting, of course, through research development workshops and including a session by Conversation Africa, and starting to consider framing your research around the question of impact, and of course why your research matters, and of course this event and activities will evolve over time. I think we're very pleased to host this 2023 Postgrad Research Week. I think it's a great opportunity for us to meet one another, build networks, peer support, and also for you to share your insights as to how we can grow and enrich the postgrad research experience at University of Pretoria. Postgrad students are an important part, they're the lifeblood, I think, of University of Pretoria, and in terms of moving the frontiers of science. And of course, being members of the UP research community, I think you are future leaders in your various spheres and sectors that you work in, and of course going to work in, and more importantly, the transdisciplinarity of that as well. The University of Pretoria graduates depends year on year, between 12 to 19% of the postgrads among the 26 public universities. Think about it, we graduate 15% among 26 public universities. So we're a significant contributor of postgraduates in the sector, in the highest among the masters and doctoral graduates. That's based on the recent Department of Higher Education and Training report. And we also have the largest or highest number of postgrad students in the country. That's honors, masters, and PhD. We have something like about 15,500 students in that sphere. So we're quite a big, you can say, a big research-intensive university in terms of postgrad students. Of course, we place a great value on our students to add to our university's diversity and social cohesion. That's important, and bring different views, because unity in diversity, and diversity enriches one's experience and knowledge base. And of course, doing things differently and contribute importantly to the knowledge creation and the impact in South Africa, and of course globally, with particular emphasis on the global South. Each and every one of you plays a role in contributing, advancing, and driving this cohesive, inclusive, diverse, and of course highly productive research culture. The important thing we need to ask ourselves all the time, why we do research, especially in the knowledge economy, and why we want to do postgrad studies. Sometimes people feel that, I've got a 3-year degree or a 4-year degree or a 5-year degree. That's it, I'm done. I need to go and work and make lots of money now or find a job. But I think in the knowledge economy, we need depth. We need good science. And I mean science in the broader, whether it's social science, human science, natural science, engineering science, economic sciences. We need good science, and good science only comes from good research. Nowadays, I use this analogy all the time, because we have load shedding all the time. Each one of us, or most of us, will probably buy a battery, or maybe an inverter or solar panels. It doesn't mean we're an expert in load shedding or energy efficiency. We just know maybe something about it. And so we need to distinguish between those two things. What we learn on the internet and what we do good science with. And we can have depth and knowledge in that. So we need to differentiate that. That's why we do postgrad studies, so that we have a really good in-depth knowledge and insight into those things. So as part of UP's 5-year strategic plan, what we call Destination 2026 and beyond, our guiding vision has been to reimagine and reposition the University of Pretoria as a leading research-intensive university in Africa, recognized for its quality, relevance, and impact, and also developing people both locally and globally. And we stand by that, and we would like to continue doing that as part of our core business. So we can be proud to affirm that with your contributions, we are well on this way towards achieving our goal to strengthen the university's research profile, of course, our international competitiveness, and of course, to contribute to society at large. We believe as a university, we aspire to be what we call a research-intensive university, and being one of the premier universities in South Africa, we are also one of the largest producers of research in this country. And more importantly, our research matters, and that's, as you know, it's one of our taglines, make today matter, and that's why we always take from there into making our research matter. And of course, importantly, the research must be aimed at changing lives as we strive to build a better economy, a better country, and at the end of the day, we must have societal impact by creating knowledge that addresses local and global challenges. And that's why collaboration is very important. As we know, some people call it the wicked problems. I call it the opportunities we have. I mean, nothing is in silos, whether it's climate change, whether it's a water issue, whether it's an energy issue, whether it's the new cell phone technology or whatever it is. It needs many, many disciplines. Being an engineer myself and being in telecoms, I find it more comfortable to talk about that because that's my area of expertise. I mean, you think about it, designing a cell phone, I mean, it's not only about the electronics or the software, it's about the graphics, it's about the design, the aesthetics, about the usability, it's about the social impact. So there's many disciplines. So it's very important, we think, to work with other disciplines. And sometimes it's very difficult because we find our comfort in our own discipline, but we need to sometimes get out of that comfort zone. And collaboration and innovation can only come, and I think the speaker will tell you more about that, the next speaker, the keynote speaker on innovation can only come by working with diverse people and diverse groups and sometimes having the uncomfortable discussions that we need to have. So I want to take this opportunity to wish those competing in the 3-minute thesis and visualize your thesis competitions all the best. Each one of you, I think, are winners, and in participating in this competition, you're well on your way to developing this important skill, and I think a very important skill, of communicating your research in a succinct and concise manner. Because you can do great research, but if you can't communicate this to even your colleagues, or even the ordinary person, or even your mom, dad, and your grandparent who are not scientists or engineers or economists, I think that's very important, because how you can communicate this shows your understanding and your depth of your knowledge matter. Of course, I'd like to thank our Department of Research Innovation for putting this event together, and the organizers and the speakers and the panelists that's going to be here, and of course our program director as well. Thank you for coming and sharing your time. And of course, it gives me great pleasure to welcome everyone this morning, and I hope you have a productive day today and tomorrow, and I'm hoping all will stay for the prize, the awarding of the prize tomorrow afternoon as well. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Prof. I think the thing to take home from Prof's words is just that first part there, people working across multiple disciplines. I'm one of those who told my parents, I'm going to do the degree for you and then I'm done. I'm going to go make my money and start my life. So it's really such a privilege to be amongst people who understand and are willing to go just that much deeper. And without becoming what we call moreri, the preacher, I'm going to ask Professor van Vuuren to come up. I just do want to tell you one or two things about Prof. However, if you want to read his full CV, it is in the programs that you received. But these are really the things that just take me in. So Dr. Janse van Vuuren is a professor at the University of Pretoria and coordinator of the Dani Cronje SAB Chair and Entrepreneurship in the Department of Business Management. He initiated and developed the first bachelor's degree with specialization in entrepreneurship in South Africa, and was instrumental in developing the master's and PhD degrees offered by the department. At the age of 25, my biggest achievement at 25 is I had a baby. That's all I could say. But at the age of 25, Dr. van Vuuren started the first of 4 entrepreneurial startups as a beginning of an entrepreneurial career. In 1992, he started an entrepreneurship, education, and training company, and that since has trained over 4,700 delegates all over South Africa and the African continent. He authored articles in various South African journals and in more than 20 international conference proceedings from all over the globe. He has lectured at various universities in Southern Africa, the USA, New Zealand, the Netherlands, and other African countries. In other words, take your pens out and write down everything he says. And then when you go for lunch, bombard him with question after question. I'll keep him still for you. So please help me welcome Professor Dr. Janse van Vuuren.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, Program Director. I think you've now created expectations that may be not fair towards me. You see, in actual fact, I don't think I'm a very good researcher. You can hear that I am an entrepreneur. I think what the Vice Principal didn't tell you is that research is very important for the university because there's money in it. There's a lot of subsidy in it. Am I right? Yes, it is. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I think that there's something I want to show you. And because sometimes we have a dull view in terms of, I've got to do research again. This research thing, am I right? How many PhDs or prospective PhDs are here? Just quickly, your hands. And masters? And honors? Oh, all the honors guys are not here yet. Okay, my dear, quickly play that thing that I showed you, please, that I want to then use it as an example, please. Sound. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, why have I played this to you? Let me ask you another question. How many people, how many individuals, how many whatever started this thing? One. Right. So we can use this as an analog for the academic fraternity. And this academic fraternity finds itself that all play a role, whether it's the natural sciences, whether it's the economic and management sciences, whether it is the natural or the engineering sciences. And everybody is supposed to make their contribution that's a valid contribution. If one of them is out of note or then off note or invalid in terms of research, that piece of science is not going to work. And therefore, each of you will have a responsibility in terms of the valid contribution that you make. And that is your contribution that you, from your side, have to take into account. Ladies and gentlemen, there are in South Africa 1.6% of the population who's got PhDs. Around about 6.9% has got master's degrees. Around about 19% who find themselves with an honors degree. So if you get involved in this situation or then activity according to research, you have a huge responsibility, not towards only then yourself, which is, as far as I'm concerned, then the major shareholder in your whole activity, but also towards then this wonderful university and also this wonderful country. Because we've got to generate science. Can you just look at that slide, please? Just move on the slide. Okay, so let's take a step back. What is a university? I'm going to just make one comment. The university takes all the information, like these other guys, the notes, and they order them into a certain order and say, but this is where we create science, scientific solutions. And what is our responsibility? We need to educate the industry. We need to educate then people to eventually use the result then as information to take then good decisions. And university is a place where you have to be able to think. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if I look at some of the people in South Africa, especially some of our leaders, thinking is really a foreign experience to them. I many a time look at some of the political leaders and I say to myself, dude, can't you think what you are then saying now? Really, with all due respect. But we, as scientific thinkers, have to make our contribution to then society. Okay, you are more or less all of you, you are trying to eventually get to a certain then level of education. Can we speak to that? All right, what is the difference between a master's degree and a PhD? If you want to then pursue a master's degree, what is supposed to happen, you are supposed to become a master of your study field. Whether it's then, and many a time I say to my students, you must become a master of entrepreneurship. But if you want to say that I'm going to become then a master in engineering, then people must be able to depend on you. You are a master in natural sciences. So people must be able to look up to you and say, you know what, this guy or this lady, they really know what they are talking about. Educating them, helping them create a decision or then a basis for proper decisions. But if you want to pursue a PhD, you're supposed to become a specialist. Would you allow then a medical GP to operate on you as then a so-called cardiologist? No, because they are specialists. So if you want to go into engineering, when you're going to go into natural sciences, when you go into economic and management sciences, you've got to be a specialist. And that's why they call you then a PhD. If you pursue this degree, to say, but okay, I'm going to write behind my name PhD, or I'm going to write then before my name DR, that they can call you doctor and then you feel good about yourself, go away now. That's not the reason why you do a master's or a PhD. You do it to enrich yourself and be then making then the contribution that you are supposed to make. Now, the reason to do that is maybe a very personal reason. But, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to pursue this, and can I give you some good advice? I have now delivered, and it will be on the 7th of September, 31 PhDs. Now that's a hell of a job, you must believe me. Please just take your supervisor into account, then to be able to do it. But what are you going to experience then during this PhD? It is a difficult road. During this master's, it is a difficult road. And that's why there's such a small percentage of the population that pursues that. So from my side, it's commendable what you are doing. It's commendable not only for the university, it's commendable regarding yourself. And now, if we say this, can I give you a practical tip? And that is, if you eventually now say, I'm going to carry on with this, and maybe you've already started to experience this, go and have then a family meeting about this thing, because it changes your life. Go, get your mother-in-law, get your whoever, your wife, then your spouse, whoever it is, and say, listen, my life is changing and it's going to change. Because it is, with all due respect, ladies, a hell of a road that you've chosen for yourself. And it's important to know that because creating science is a difficult process. But it's an important process then for the eventually in the sustainability of any country. Can we carry on? Okay. That one? Yeah. All right. So, if we ask ourselves the question, but okay, how to identify this research thing? There's one important thing that I want to take out there. And that is, how do you keep your motivation? How do you keep your motivation that you don't say to yourself and says that I'm tired about this thing? The supervisor of mine is sending my stuff back over and over again. He says to me, I'm not too unique. I'm not then innovating. There's nothing then regarding that. What is your then guideline in terms of this? And ladies and gentlemen, I always say, your curiosity is supposed to motivate you. You want to know something, and you want to answer that so-called research question, and you want to say, what am I not in contributing here? Where's the gap that I am going to fill here? And there's something you have to remember. You know, I've been to 54 different universities teaching entrepreneurship. And the one that struck me was Cambridge and Oxford. And there you can ask a student and say, listen, okay, but what are you enrolled for? Which degree are you enrolled for? And he will answer you the following. And you must listen now carefully to this. He will say, I am reading towards my degree. Now, I always say to my student, Papa, you're going to read. because you read towards a degree. People do not just jump into it. And I always say to my students, ladies and gentlemen, who said this? Why do you say this? No, I feel like it. No, that's bullshit. It's not like you feel about it. Somebody said that. Somebody eventually can back you up. And you can, in the process, you can say, you know what? I can make this contribution. And eventually they will say, X, Y, Z, who cannot be you, made this valid contribution. And that's one of the reasons why, and that's not just me, I love then quantitative research. I don't do qualitative research. Quantitative research because nobody can then argue with you whether they are wherever, then argue with you then what the statistical then eventually significance is. Whether I apply then a ANOVA or MANOVA or structural equations model in Australia or New Zealand or wherever in then Europe or in the States, the result is the result. But there is a place for then qualitative this. Practical situations, always if you start with this, ask yourself these questions. Is it measurable? Can I measure this thing? I always ask my students, can you measure this? If you can't measure it, leave it out. Can you get access to the data? Because, ladies and gentlemen, you know, when was it about 1967 that we then went to the moon? Am I right? I can't remember, but it's hella long ago. Now, don't try to get to the moon again. What do you want out of this whole endeavor of yours? Be honest with me. If you are students, what do you want out of this thing? A piece of paper, man. You want to cross the stage and there they want to say, listen, okay, XYZ got this master's degree. So don't try to go to the moon again. There's a whole group of people, I think it's more than 5,000, working on how to get to Mars. You only one. So ask yourself the realistic question also, what's the practical value? In my field of entrepreneurship, if I cannot help a guy to make more money, then my student and the research, we are wasting our time. There are very fancy stuff that you can work out regarding entrepreneurship. But if it means nothing, I always ask guys at the conference as well, listen, if there were to then be 50 entrepreneurs here, this thing that you now presented on policy and all that kind of rubbish, then you say, listen, okay, now, how's this guy going to make more money? No, I don't know. So it's useless. It's then research for the sake of research. Don't do that to yourself. And don't do it then to the university, and don't do it then to the industry that is supposed to help you. Can we switch on? Okay, now, fundamental questions. Ask yourself this question. This is very practical. It's a very, very short question. Now, okay, this is what I want to do. And then you say, but so what? Now, I've done this. No, what else? What am I going to do with this? Who is going to do something with this? And it's important to answer that question. That this academic fraternity needs your information. If you want to collaborate and you want to say, how can I use then the results of this engineering student to eventually innovate and then get it to market? Then we're making a contribution. Natural sciences can be able to give us a result. And look what happens at this point in time in a very, very productive way. What is happening then in genetics, and eventually it goes then to agriculture. But it answers the question, so what? This is what is the usability of this going to be to eventually do this. And then, do I really contribute to what is available? And can I give you a practical tip? Do not write to your supervisor. It's a very dangerous statement to make. Nothing has been done. Then on this, have you written that previously? Nothing has been done. That's rubbish. You don't know then what's being done. If you're then here in your third year of your PhD, you can say very little has been done, and that's the research gap, yes. But not that story of nothing is being done. It's not making you so wise if you read then 2 years on the field to be able to do it. And then identify the constructs. Make it easy for yourself. Don't go about and say, listen, yeah, but you know what? I don't exactly know what this thing means. And then people are very ingenuitive in terms of what they dream up. I'm now going to use an example. And this example is now, a student approached me the other day. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm in this game now for 27 years. And this student said to me, now listen to this word. Now, if you understand this word, I had to go and then look it up. Entrepreneurial broccolage. I thought, where the hell did you dream up this? So I said, okay, what is the subconstruct of this broccolage thing that you now then started to work up here? No, he also doesn't know. So I said, listen, that's off the table, Papa. We're not going to work on that kind of thing. Because we do not even know the subconstructs of this broccolage thing. Fact knows, I don't know. What I afterwards then found out is then it's like effectual behavior. As you go along, you build the road. I don't exactly know then what that is supposed to happen. But okay, if we then contribute then to the practical value, ask the question, what is practical? But make it clear, what do you want to research? Break it down into the subconstructs. Know exactly what is made up of it. If you take something, then you say, these are then the elements that I'm going to research. Can we carry on? Yes. Now, okay. Something just of practical advice. If you want to be able to then pursue this master's and this PhD and collaborate, ladies and gentlemen, you must then take into account that your supervisors are clued up people. Sometimes you say, listen, then the professor from Field, I'm so grateful for the guy. He's always carrying on with this and this. That's not the point. The point is then that some of them are very clued up and they know what they are doing. But unfortunately, you must also take into account that they have from their side sometimes not all the knowledge that you experience from them. Don't be so unrealistic. We're only talking about people that know their fields, but they don't know it all. Obviously, they wouldn't know it all. And in the process, we can be able to say this, but there's one comment that I really want to take out of this. That last comment there. You are a team working towards that then qualification. If you want to then have a practical tip from me is take your supervisor in as a friend. Don't alienate your supervisor. Take them for coffee. Don't bribe them. But take them for coffee. Take them for then and discuss this. Because in the process, you need them. But take into account that they are inquisitive people. They also need you. So it's a two-way street. So again, I say, make the supervisor your friend. Make your colleague that is with you on a research project your friend. Because you need collaboration. Even if it's in a different field, you need collaboration to be then eventually innovative. Okay. If we say, listen, okay, the research gaps, the only way you can be able to do that is to read, especially in the beginning. And ladies and gentlemen, the theoretical base, the secondary research that's being done, if you read properly, you are going to get a gap where you can say, this is where I can make my contribution. If I mark a PhD, the first thing I'm looking for is whether a student can give me a clear indication of where's the research gap in this field. Even if it's a sub-specialized field, a research gap is what you're going to fill. Why? Because in the process, that is where you are going to make your contribution to the body of literature. Okay, let's quickly keep going to the next one. And I want to say to you then just quickly here, no, let me put it this way around. Don't confuse yourself. Don't confuse yourself if you start with this. Make it very, very simple. I created there something everybody will understand it. I could have created something a little bit more difficult. To say, listen, okay, here is then our statement. A topic is a statement. It's a very, very simple thing. A dependent and an independent variable, klar. And then you say, listen, okay, the relationship between job satisfaction and employee performance. It's not that. And now you must take into account that if we say relationships, it can either be then correlation or then a differentiation. So you're either going to go down the route of then correlating this, look at how same they are then, if you can call them that, or then how they differentiate, or you can say, is the one causing the other one? And this is now where I go back to say, you must think. Think in terms of what you say with your first statement or your first topic. Because it's a total different ballgame in my field. If you ask the question, or then think of, I am going to do a causal study. Causality is a difficult thing. Causality we can more or less, in my field only, then do with a structural equations model. To then predict and say, listen, this thing leads to this thing. But don't then confuse yourself, because the biggest problem you can create for yourself with, then that title or that so-called topic, is then to write a paragraph. After a while, you have so many variables there. It's 4 studies. Remember, you don't want to go to the moon, you want a piece of paper. You do only one PhD. I've many a time said this to a number of my students. How many PhDs do you want? 4 or 3? No, you have only one. How many master's degrees do you want? No, only one. So okay, then do only one. Make it very, very simple. And then, by means of that, I'm going to be done now. I promise you. Okay, just quickly, the next one. Something that I want to just indicate to you, that if I said that, next one please, then we have to take into account there must always be a golden line. And the golden line is topic, objective, research question, research problem, hypotheses. If those are in line, then you conceptualize the study. Let me close with this. Ladies and gentlemen, the most difficult thing to do with any research, any master's, any PhD student, is to conceptualize the study, to think. If you've done that, even if it takes you 6 months, it's happiness. But if you can be able to think, conceptualize that, the execution from there on is in actual fact easy. But if you get confused in the beginning, too many variables, too many this, and then all of that is out of line, you've got a problem. Because then after a year, maybe if you do a quantitative study, then after a year you get your stats back, you look at it and you say to yourself, no, what the hell is going on here? How do I report this stuff? Because, I'm going to close really with this. Remember, there's a major audience, or then the most important audience. You think the most important audience are the people that's going to read the stuff afterwards? You think so? You make a hell of a mistake. There is. Then the first and most important audience are those external examiners. They are bastards, Papa. You must know that. They read that thing. What do you do in essence? As a supervisor and you as your student, you give them a free pass. And say, listen, guys, criticize us if you can. And they are going to criticize you. They're going to read it in depth. The rest of the nation is going to say, maybe, yes, this is interesting. The article is going to be interesting out of that. But not that. But okay, it seems to me I've got to stop now. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having me. No, everybody can take it, except my song. You can't take my song.
No, okay. So I've just asked Prof if he wouldn't mind sharing the slide to the department. And then I think everyone who attended today might want to take a good look at that. I warned you and I told you to take notes. Because that's a crash course, especially you who put your hand up with honors. That's all the tips you need. So you need to make sure that this is infiltrated. And I wonder if we shouldn't find out where Prof's office is, and then if we come knocking on your door as honors and master students, you can't chase us away. So Prof is now my favorite speaker. Sorry, Prof Maharaj. He's now my person because he used orchestra. And he has the orchestra manager at Tux. Anybody who uses orchestra flash mobs gets a 5-star from me. We actually once did it here on campus a few years ago. We did a flash mob in the library with the whole orchestra, so we're hoping to do it again one day soon. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to then let you know where we are going now. It's our comfort break. Remember I explained earlier on that you are going to leave the venue, turn towards the left to the normal cell, and can I ask that we keep time? I tried to make up for all the time we lost by starting 10 minutes late, so now we are back on track. I'm very strict. So, yes, Ngutu? All right, so please do make sure that we are all back in here, seated and ready to start at 10:30. All right, hunt Prof down before he disappears and ask the questions. I insist, Miss Honors, I really insist that you go and introduce yourself to Prof and ask him 1 or 2 questions, because this opportunity is golden. It's not just to the master's lady, but I think anybody, before Prof runs away, go and ask him if he can't speak to the externals so that they go nice on you. All right, thank you. We may all exit. Thank you, everybody. Welcome back. Okay, now we get to the part that excites me the most. Because whatever's said here today, you get to poke a lot of questions at lunchtime and get as much knowledge and value out of this as possible. So I would like to introduce our panelists, and they will each get an opportunity to come up here and tell you a few interesting things, and then maybe have a few words amongst themselves that we could learn from. Our topic here is research, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And you know, when I was sitting down and they asked me to chair this discussion, I thought, research, innovation, and entrepreneurship. So innovation is coming up with something new. And entrepreneurship is taking that new thing or an idea and making it a viable thing. You're going to make money out of it. I always used to say to people, entrepreneurship, the heart of entrepreneurship is problem solving. But when we start splitting things like this, innovation is really the problem solving, coming up with something new. How do I make money out of it? That's the entrepreneurship part. What's interesting for me is the research part of research. Entrepreneurship. Essentially, we're here to talk entrepreneurship. The research aspect of entrepreneurship is such a broad field, and that is why we are so privileged to have people who are specialists in their field. And I would just like to read to you their very short biographies. This is by no means everything about them, but it's just some of the highlights. I also want to brag and tell you that they're all my friends. I know them. So Dr. Mthokozisi Sibanda, he's the founder and chief executive officer for African Applied Chemical. He holds a PhD degree in chemical engineering from the University of Pretoria, and he specializes in polymers and chemical product design. He's completed research stints in Germany, mainly at the Martin Luther University in Halle, Saal, and the Institute of Polymer Research in Dresden. He spent 12 years developing innovative malaria vector control interventions and published several papers in high-impact peer-reviewed journals on this subject. He also holds a certificate in entrepreneurship and small business management from the University of South Africa and a postgraduate diploma in general business management from the Gordon Institute of Business Science. His primary focus is product development. I wear the socks he made every 2 weeks in the bush, and they work. Then we have Ms. Kinelwe Khananes. She is the co-founder of SR Snacks, a new South African food company which manufactures and markets healthy snack products made from gluten-free, climate-smart, indigenous African grain sorghum. Ms. Khanan is a passionate entrepreneur and business leader with over 7 years' experience in the research and innovation ecosystems. She holds a Bachelor of Commerce degree in economics and econometrics. I think you're also from Tux. Yeah, we keep it home. Then last but not least, also I've had the privilege of tasting her products. I don't know if we're going to be lucky enough again this time round. But please do ask her for her details after this, because you won't find them in the retail space. They're selling them strictly online, I think. And I've actually used them with my game ranger studies, educating kids. We handed out some of those samples. They're fantastic. So Mr. Thomas Smith is a senior associate at Kitch IP with experience in patent and design prosecution, as well as in regulatory compliance and the drafting of legal opinions on a diverse range of IP-related topics. With a strong technical background in plant and crop biotechnology, his practice is focused towards conventional and biologic pharmaceuticals, vaccines, molecular biology, genetics, GMOs, bioremediation, maratomas, and biotechnological products in general. He is passionate about the application of intellectual property as a toolkit for solving business challenges and prides himself on his cross-cutting, data-driven approach. He has presented numerous seminars and lectures across the country and is involved in educating the next generation of IP entrepreneurs. I'm also very privileged to say he's a colleague at Scout South Africa, willingly gives up every Friday to volunteer, teaching children how to be good citizens. And on the off chance that, you know, these urban children ever get stuck in the wilderness because we don't know what they're doing there, they will know how to survive. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to invite ladies first. Please come and do your presentation, and then We'll have Thomas and then Mthokozisi, and followed by the panel discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Afternoon. I do want to keep it brief because I'm amongst scholars and I have quite a touchy relationship with academia. I think it was part of what Prof mentioned earlier, that practical and theory sometimes conflict. But mine will be brief. It's how I've titled it, actually, it's a case study. My company, as mentioned, is SR Snacks, which is short for Sorghum Revolution. It was established in 2017, so we have a good 5 years, 7 years skin in the game. Our industry focus is agriculture and the food and the manufacturing sector. And as a woman leader, I think that could be a good topic to discuss with the issues of South Africa as a context. So yes, in brief, it's a case study of our journey in terms of SR Snacks. In brief, or introduction, our business was started through a technology transfer. I think South Africa is quite new in terms of IP and commercialization and the transfer of that. But we were one of the first, I would like to say or think, who were or had the privilege of being in the space of IP and learning and experimenting on how to transfer IP to a startup, which is what we are. In terms of the company, it was co-founded by myself and my then partner, who was a food scientist, professor, and myself as a young, passionate entrepreneur. I think sometimes when we speak about commerce, a lot of business people, if they are here, the very first thing we learn or in a business study textbook is the difference between a leader and a manager. And today I think while I was thinking about my presentation, that came up to mind. And I always ask myself, why is it that in a textbook they would like to make a distinction between leadership and management? I come from the school of thought that entrepreneurs are born, and if we all know anything about business, if you would fail a test, you would say leaders are made, when in actual fact, leaders are born. So I do think in the space of entrepreneurship, it is a skill, a born one, a natural one. So it would really be of interest and quite informative to say entrepreneurship for me was a spark. It came naturally. So when I was sitting and I was introduced to this opportunity, I saw a gap and I saw something that could change the industry, and I did see a financial gap as well. So that was the birth of what we would call SR Snacks Sorghum Revolution, and we're trading as SR Snacks. Yes, so this is the product. We've gone through a lot of product development, and it's always around building a brand. At the time when we came up with the name, it was a group of us, a group of creatives, and we managed to come up with the name So Yum, sorghum biscuits. This is the first offering. It is trademarked. And the ethos or the brand idea was to create innovative products made from South Africa and to localize and to create quality brands that could compete internationally. I still laugh. As a little girl, I think 7 years ago, I say little girl, I mean naive entrepreneur at the time, I really, really believed that we were going to change the world with a biscuit. So I remember every competition I used to do, I used to end off with the tagline, change doesn't have to be difficult. It can be as simple as sharing a soya sorghum biscuit. So I still believe that. I still stand firmly on that. with all the difficulties we face in the industry, I still think there's potential in really standing and creating brands that could really be impactful. As mentioned, the product came from an African spirit. It was born from Ubuntu. We were working with a diverse number of people, food scientists from the agricultural space, consumer scientists, business people, professors. So in essence, it really wasn't two people, it was a team of people that came and developed this. So I would like to emphasize that with any project or any learning or even in academia, teamwork is primarily the most important thing. The problem we were solving, as mentioned, I think coming from a research background, the problems were vast and many. And as a company over the years, we had to position ourselves. So the company stands firm on localization, meaning we want to source all raw materials from the end product, from the raw materials to the final product output to be local. The reason is we all know the economy and how it is. Most of the time in South Africa, we speak of the lack of production. We speak of food insecurity or security thereof. And as a company with all those words and jargons from research, we had to try to position ourselves and find our clear vision in terms of the very vast research and variables. So the company is about localization. The company is strong or has a strong belief that we need, if we're going to speak of food security, we need to be dependent, hence the manufacturing aspect of the company and its vision. And also of the raw materials to source from local producers and suppliers. So that's become our vision, that's become our mission, and we needed to get a clear perspective on that. Our product, as said, is sorghum. We are directly competing or finding an alternative to what is predominantly on the shelves, which is wheat in South Africa. So we are an alternative source that could be reliable, accessible to all, which is quite fundamental in our principles and establishment. Climate problem, we all know of the issues that we face as a global community in terms of transformation or transforming vast industries, farming and agriculture. From an African point of view, from a South African point of view, is where we believe our competitive advantage lies. So when we speak about climate problem, I don't want to speak to the farmer side, but as a business, we're committed to providing or finding a solution to create demand for sorghum, so that we can create a supply demand. As mentioned, I think with what I was explaining, these other solutions we're offering: impact substitution strategy, import substitution strategy, sorry. It goes back to the principles I was talking about of being dependent and reliant on ourselves and our manufacturing capacity as a country, and providing healthier options. And also, through what we know about sorghum, it is a smart crop. And then I'll go into the target market, but as mentioned, it's really about offering something that's accessible to everybody in terms of price and accessibility. The company does have export potential, and as mentioned, when you look at us from a case study point of view, we're talking about having a competitive advantage. So indigenous knowledge, indigenous crops is still something that's so important in Africa in terms of agriculture. I always like making a point about rooibos, the rooibos story, and I'm very glad that we take up IP as interest. I think in a lot of our dealings or as a country, we overlook the aspects of intellectual property and protecting our knowledge, which is what the rest of the world does quite well. If we look at France and Champagne, those are some of the examples of what's possible if we can work policy around ensuring that we protect our IP and intellectual property. The company is a commercialization story from the IP, from conception. We have an IP license with the University of Pretoria. It also speaks about aspects of royalty benefit sharing. I know sometimes when we speak about money, it's a touchy subject, but I know most school of thoughts are like a company would be averse to paying royalties, but I think it's a fundamental principle, or within the policy, it's a necessary need to be able to pay royalties because it speaks about the knowledge. But also in terms of the IP, it gives the strength of utilizing the intellectual property or value add to the business. But our journey has been difficult to break into industry because of the issues we have about monopoly and oligopolies that exist in our industry. So breaking through or really entering the markets does have a lot of barriers to entry, and it's some of the failed regulations I think that sometimes we don't discuss. But in short, we had a technology transfer through an IP license. We were able to trademark. We were able to trademark in different SADC countries too, namely Botswana and Lesotho. We were able to travel to London. We were part of the Royal Academy of Engineering cohort 5, where we were the #1 first prize winners then. Back then it was in 2019, and they saw the competitive advantage. Just to be short, I think I'll stop here with commercialization. Commercialization is a vast space or new space in South Africa, and a lot of interest sits here with product adoption, market adoption, and not trying to jump the stages. And I think when we speak about a 5-year journey, we should really look into the aspects of how to commercialize effectively in the South African context and the broader African context. So I'll stop my presentation there. I would have played a video, but in the interest, okay. In the interest of time, I'll just play the video at the end.
Morning, everybody. I hope we're all enjoying this. So, well, while I'm seeing if I can get this working, I've literally just got one button to press. So, I was brought on to kind of represent, I guess, the legal side of things, and I'm afraid my speech is going to be a little bit monomaniacal in that regard, so please forgive me. Normally, when I'm given a a topic like this, to come and chat to, to all you fine folk, I will invariably lean on the sort of what would I guess you'd call the 1 hour introduction into intellectual property approach. It's something that a lot of patent attorneys know how to do. It covers all of our bases. This is what I think about every day. But I think for people who are wanting to start out and think about entrepreneurship, and because I only have 10 minutes, I think I need to basically just give you a quick kind of introduction into law, why you should care about law, how it's relevant to your business, and then kind of touch on intellectual property at the end because, again, monomania. So basically, if you get nothing else out of my little speech here, and I promise I'll keep it to time, it's that you need to think about the legal aspects of things when you're entering business. These legal aspects encompass a lot of different aspects of your business. They tend to be overlapping. You need to have a basic understanding of the law and how it works. And again, plugging for my own little field here, intellectual property is part of that. Intellectual property is it's a set of legal tools that you can apply to business problems. And of course, you should talk to the experts. I know that the University of Pretoria has a very good tech transfer office, and they can kind of help you start your journey, but you can also talk to people like me as well. We don't bite. So, to start with, why should you care? So I'm going to use a hypothetical example here. This is basically the idea here, or the scenario here, is you are a postgraduate student, you are doing your PhD, you've got this amazing, you're working with moths or something, so you're at the zoology department over there where they keep all the cockroaches. You've got this wonderful idea involving silk. The silkworms make silk, they've been doing it for a long time, famous for it, but there are other moths that make silk. There's a moth called the African silk moth, and there's a business opportunity here. There's a really great product story, an African product, it's silk, you can make beautiful fabric out of it, you can give it to people to make clothing, you can stick it on runway models. As a business concept, it's got a lot of things going for it. So you go and you talk to your supervisor, and you start, on the side, while you're doing your PhD, you start getting this thing ready. You start making enclosures for your moths and overcoming challenges. You start a little moth breeding program so that they're all happy in your little enclosures. You go and you research the techniques you need to take the silk and make it into something usable for fabric. And finally, you end up with a wonderful, high-value product. And you're basically set. Your business journey is about to start, and it's wonderful. And 5 years later, it's a disaster. Everything's burning down. So what's happened? Your competitors have found out that this product is great, and they are poaching some of your staff. And they are making and selling your enclosures, and they are taking your little moths, and they are breeding them as well, and they are using your technique, and they are copying everything. They're even copying your brand identity. And while you're doing this, the tech transfer office is kind of sending you emails along the lines of, so can we talk about a royalty deal, a licensing deal? And you're like, but what? This is my idea. This is my thing. What do I need to talk to the university about? And then as this is going on, the media is writing op-eds about how this is biopiracy, and you don't even know what biopiracy is, but it sounds bad. And how there's a local group in Mpumalanga where you originally collected these moths, and they're very unhappy because you've stolen their traditional knowledge, and you're freaking out because now you're getting worrying emails from the Department of Environmental Affairs. And then finally, you're trying to offshore this company, and your investors are coming to you and chatting to you about how to offshore it. And how do you even do that? You did everything here. How do you make it go overseas? What are the implications? What do I need to worry about? This is part of what real entrepreneurs deal with. It's an interlocking web of issues, and some of it is obviously business issues, some of it is PR issues, but there are also legal issues at play here. So, I mean, these are the sort of things that I would immediately identify as your potential legal issues. And you can see that each of those aspects actually touches onto multiple different legal problems. Okay, so now hopefully I've got you hooked into the idea that you should care about the legal aspects a little bit. But then when you think about legal, what does that even mean? So, good news for all the philosophers out there, nobody's yet come up with a great definition for what the law even is. Lawyers don't have a great definition. We've got a couple of kind of working ideas. Nobody's been able to nail it down properly. But in our case, the case of South Africa, our law comes from a number of different places. It obviously comes from government. It comes from the legislator writing laws. and it comes from the common law, whatever that is, and it comes from legal precedent. That's where you hear about courts giving judgments, and that somehow is the law as well. It comes from customs. It can come from legal academics, or at least legal academics like to believe that the law can come from legal academics writing things. So it comes from a bunch of different places. Right, there we go. As I say, legislation is probably the easiest to understand. That's where government writes down an act and writes down regulations. That's going to affect your life because an act can do a bunch of different things. And unfortunately, acts are also fairly broadly written, so the regulations, which are a lot harder to find, then give life to that act. And that's where the minister will usually then produce empowering regulations to make that legislation workable. As I say, they also come from legal precedent, and this is the system that we have that we kind of inherited. We've inherited from a couple of different places, but partly from the English and partly from the Dutch and partly all the way back into Roman times, where if a court decides on something, it doesn't necessarily make law, but it interprets the law, and that changes how things can work. And then we have common law, which is a set of principles that we got from all over the shop and kind of collected over the years, and they became law more or less because everyone just kept using them and kept agreeing that they worked. So if you ever have a dispute with your neighbor about, their water spout, they've got a little, they've got a nice sloping roof and they've got a gutter on it, and the spout from the gutter is pouring water into your garden, the principles that the court will eventually deal with to work out what's the problem here actually stem all the way back from the Roman era, where presumably they had similar problems and they came up with some solutions that have worked over time. And finally, all of our law, as I'm sure you guys learned in school, or somebody must have told you about, stems or is tested against our Constitution, which is kind of an overriding set of principles that all the law that we have in the country is supposed to get balanced against. So that's great. You now have this is like the year one, class one introduction to law concept that you have in your heads, but at least you got that there now. And the practical upshot for businesses and entrepreneurs, right, is that this law, the concept of law, has a number of impacts on your life. The one thing it does is it sets the ground rules, the things we don't think about. I mean, we talk about starting companies, but what is a company? It's a legal construct, it's a legal idea, and the rules about how companies are formed, how companies act, how you do certain things are governed by law. If you have a dispute with your shareholders, you've got a company where a bunch of people own shares, you're probably going to have to go to the Companies Act to go and understand how to resolve it. And then the law also prescribes actions which need to be followed or which you cannot do. So, for instance, that argument or that discussion about suddenly being accused of biopiracy, there's actually a specific act that deals with the issue of what's called bioprospecting. And the law prescribes how you're supposed to go about doing that, how you're supposed to do this thing, and what the penalties are for not doing this thing. And for anyone who wants to read into it, the penalties are actually supposedly quite severe. I've never seen anyone get fined, but it's millions of rands potentially for bioprospecting without a proper permit. And then the other thing that the law does is the law provides rights. So you do a thing, and you gain a right. And that right allows you to do things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. So, for instance, you have an idea, you've got a brand going on, you apply for a trademark, you get the trademark. The trademark comes with a set of rights. It comes with a set of things that allows you to do and potentially to stop other people from doing. And this gives you things that you can do in a business sense. So, having talked about these rights, we get into intellectual property finally, and this is where the whole thing becomes a bit, as I say, monomaniacal. Intellectual property is one aspect of this greater concept of law that deals with the creation and ownership of intellectual property rights. And these IPRs are formal property rights that are derived from creations of the mind. That's the kind of the general unifying concept. And they can be bought, sold, they can be licensed, they can be treated like property. And most of these are governed by legislation. There's some common law aspects to these as well. And they vary in their scope, in their purpose, how they are obtained, what sort of rights they grant, how long those rights last for, how you go about dealing with other people who have them, all those sorts of things. So it's a very broad concept. And the practical upshot to these is that these rights, as I say, They give you things that you can do, they give you legal things that you can do, and they also interact with other aspects of the law as well. So if you are, say you've got your trademark now, as I said, this trademark gives you certain rights. This trademark counts as a piece of property. It'll actually show up on your, if you do a valuation of the company, the trademark will show up as part of the valuation. You can then go and you can make a deal with some other entity to license the rights to this thing. And that will involve commercial law. It will involve this intellectual property law. So there's now, you're pulling into this bundle of different legal concepts that are all interrelated. And as I say, the other final upshot that I'd like you all to take away from this is this idea that besides the fact that you all need a general understanding of the law, but that the law and especially intellectual property provides a set of tools that enable certain things that you can do in your business. And just to quickly wrap around to our example and sort of just drive the point home, a lot of these issues that I laid out, a lot of the panic that you would see 5 years from your nice idea, they could have been preempted or dealt with to a large extent by having this understanding. And it's something that I bang on about a lot and we'll probably chat about in our discussion. But I feel like this is where entrepreneurs are often failed by I'd say failed by society almost, but in terms of their education, in terms of the fact that there's one of me going around and chatting about this sort of stuff, but really we all needed to learn about it in school. I didn't learn about it until it was way later in my life. We don't understand the law. We don't understand how the law works. We don't understand how rights work. We kind of just absorb it as part of the background radiation of our lives, but we don't really know how to work with it. And the end result is that we often are left floundering around at these problems that could have been solved. And especially in business is where this stuff comes to a sharp point. Okay. Yeah, so in conclusion, the conclusion's the same as the introduction. I'm just going to hammer on the same points over. How are we doing for time? Oh, great. I always rush through these things so we've got more time to talk about other things. But conclusion, same as the beginning. There are lots of legal aspects. They're complex and overlapping. I could give you multiple one-hour lectures about different bits and bobs of this thing. You need to at least just have an idea in your head of generally how the law works, what law is pertinent to your business, and also just who to talk to. That's just knowing that, as I say, you have a tech transfer office. I did not know University of Pretoria had a tech transfer office until I finished studying here. It would have solved a lot of problems to be able to wander down to wherever they are and just say hi to Ray Philway and just, ask her about things. And finally, again, this idea of the law and rights as not an opponent that you need to run away from or like some kind of dragon that you need to battle, but as a set of tools, as a set of tools in a toolkit that you use for your business purposes. And yeah, that's me. That's my speech. We'll chat on the rest later.
Is it afternoon? It's afternoon, it's still morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity to stand in front of you. I'm going to present our experiences. I'm formerly a PhD at postdoc of the University of Pretoria, and I took my research and went for business instead of getting a job. And I'm going to speak about our experiences and hopefully inspire some of you who are doing a master's and PhD to really look at applied research and take your knowledge forward and create high-value businesses. Before I start speaking, there's an article that caught my eye over the weekend from IOL. Says UP's high-tech business incubator tax innovation is ranked 44th on the industrial application ranking. And to me, this is a very great achievement because I think to have tax innovation, I'll speak about incubators later in my presentation, is such a great idea of getting students transitioning from being researchers into high-tech entrepreneurs. So I think we should give UP a round of applause for this achievement. I was hoping Pindele Chabangu, the Center Manager of Tax Innovation, was going to be here, and he would have told us more about this. So I started my business in 2016. I was still a postdoc at UP. My supervisor then, or host, they call it a host at PhD level or at postdoc level, encouraged me to free range, said, you're now a postdoc, do whatever you want. And if you look at the human resources rules on postdocs, you're not an employee of a university, or also you're not a student. So you can do whatever you want, you can come at any time, as long as you and your host have an understanding, you can really do a lot using university infrastructure and using university time. So I started my company in 2016, the second year of my postdoc, and currently I was taking a technology that we had invented at the university, and the university patented the technology and exclusively licensed the technology to us. I've got 9 full-time employees, 3 are focused on sales, 6 are focused on production. I'm currently incubated at Tax Innovation. We're renting a fiber spinning facility that manufactures our technology from the CSIR. I'm going to tell you a story about this equipment that we're using. So what is our technology? If you can imagine, we manufacture textile fibers, essentially. But if you can imagine a fiber thinner than the strand of your hair, and if you can try and imagine it hollow, we can infuse liquid into those fibers. And what the fiber does is it acts as a reservoir, as a container to store the liquid, and slowly releases tiny bits of the liquid to the surface of the fiber, from inside to the surface, okay? So you get to protect the liquid that you have stored inside whilst only releasing small amounts. So if you can imagine a liquid that is very volatile, it will not evaporate too quickly because it's stored inside the reservoir. But what will evaporate quickly is what's been released. Also, if you make a textile out of that fiber, when you wash the textile, you only wash what's been released. You can't wash what's still stored inside and is still being continually released onto the surface of the fiber. So the first product that we did was long-lasting insect-repellent textiles. We infuse the fiber with insect repellents, and you can make a textile that is insect repellent no matter how many times you wash it. We've shown that you can wash it up to 25 times. It still remains insect repellent. And we took this to the market. It was based on my study, and the idea was we wanted to suppress outdoor malaria transmission. So when you're outdoors, mosquitoes tend to bite you. On the ankles, they are attracted by foot odor. So we wanted to have a product that you can hang around your ankles, and that product continuously exudes an insect repellent and mitigate bites on the ankles and reduce outdoor malaria transmission. So we make bands, insect repellent bands, and outdoor hiking socks. We sell it in the Kruger National Park, and it's a huge tourist business that is linked to the Kruger National Park. So we sell it through the lodges that service those tourists. Those tourists are our customers. We've got about 90 outlets, and we also sell online, and we're continuously expanding our sales. So this was a nice business to start with. I learned a lot in how to make a product and sell a product. The ultimate thing is, can you sell your product? We've got a pipeline of high-value products. I'm going to speak about the next generation mosquito net for use to control insecticide-resistant mosquitoes using our technology. We're also involved in a strategic partnership with a company called River Bioscience, which manufactures pheromone traps for agricultural pest control. So everyone is moving towards sustainable agriculture, and high-value markets such as the European Union are banning the use of synthetic insecticides. So you need to use alternative means of controlling pests in agriculture, and one of them is to use insect sex pheromones, female insects release pheromones to attract males, we can use our technology to slowly release the pheromones because they are very expensive, but using our technology, we suppress the volatility and reduce the cost of using those pheromones and making this technology more sustainable. We've also made slow-release transdermal drug release patches. We've demonstrated that we can infuse cannabis oil into the fibers and make a patch that slowly doses the active through your skin. The project that is coming close after the insect repellent textiles is next generation mosquito nets, and it solves the problem in insecticide resistance. Africa has a huge burden of malaria. 90% of all deaths due to malaria are in Africa. And one of the ways to control or reduce transmission of malaria is to sleep under a mosquito net. And this mosquito net needs to be treated with an insecticide to kill the mosquitoes when they try to bite you. And the problem is now mosquitoes are getting resistant to that insecticide. But using our technology, we can infuse alternative actives and slowly release them. The main barrier to the market is your mosquito net needs to be washable for at least 20 washes before it fails. So using our slow release technology, as I explained before, you only wash what's been released, you can't wash what's stored inside. So we've managed to achieve this, and we're busy trying to finish the regulatory processes, and hopefully once this product is in, we have a very big product. So enough about our products and so forth. What I wanted to talk to you about mostly was our journey towards commercializing UP developed technology, and I divided it into three: technology development, product development, and value chain development. And throughout the process, you need an incubator here to develop your business process. So let's start about technology development. This is now here at the university. So what you're doing here as PhDs, masters, is technology development. The only problem that I have with universities is that they play mainly here the TRL level 1, basic research. Basic research produces a lot of papers, and university is pushing for papers because for every paper published, we get a subsidy from the government. It was at some point 120,000 rands per paper, and that's how the university makes money. To me, this subsidy is a problem simply because it forces researchers to focus on only publishing papers, and they not focus on taking that knowledge that they're creating in order to get it applied. So a lot of papers are being published, a lot of knowledge is being created, but we're not converting that knowledge to solve our problems. So that's the biggest problem for a lot of you. You'll find that after you finish your PhD, you still do not have something tangible that you can make into your business. So fortunately, I've been encouraged by my supervisor. I've always wanted to be an industrialist. And by my PhD, I told myself, my research is going to be applied, and I'm going to work on a product that I can take into the market. So I really tried to push my research towards proof of concept, which universities rarely do. And I used the university and international partners. For example, I got a bursary from the University of Pretoria to spend a month in Germany to do product development, technology development. So working with international partners that are so far ahead in terms of research, it really helped to bridge this gap of not taking our technology to TRL level 3 and onwards. So once you push your technology, you start to get to higher TRL levels. I think your technology, you should be able to demonstrate your technology at a pilot scale. And once you can demonstrate at a pilot scale, we can start to get funding from either IDC or TIA. But initially, when you start from proof of concept, for me, to get from proof of concept to pilot scale, I had to use my own money. I had to use the triple F, family, friends, and fools. And once we had advanced, we could convince IDC to put money in there. And as we further advanced, when we started making sales, venture capitalists also started coming in to invest the money. So it's not clear how you can advance yourself from applied research from university to being a fully fledged technology business. But you really need to work hard and to find funds out there. We entered competitions. South African Breweries Foundation, we won about 150,000 rands. Gauteng Accelerator Program, I'm going to talk about it. We got about 200,000 rands, and all that money we shoved into moving forward in terms of technology development. So once your technology is demonstratable at pilot scale, you can now produce, in our case, the fibers at a fairly high speed. You can start converting those fibers into products. I showed you the insect repellent textiles that we're making. So you need to make a shelf-ready product that can be bought, and then you need to sell that product. So you can go to expos or sell it online. Expos are very good to sell your product so that you can gauge the feel of what your customers think about your product. For example, we went to this, there used to be a Gauteng Getaway Expo at the Dome. So we would meet a lot of outdoor people and sell these products to them, and we'll get feedback from them. So that's how you do it. Hardware, you have to sell it to your prospective customers. So imagine in an expo, people are moving around and they're carrying socks and bangles and saying, would you want to buy this? And for a lot of people, that could be demeaning, because you are telling yourself, you've got a PhD, you must be sitting in an office feeling like an executive, rather than selling like a hawker. But you really need to sell your product to your customer in order to get a feel of what the customer thinks about your product. Then once your product has been completed, you can then work on how do you mass manufacture your product. So that's value chain development. And what we learned here is focus on what you're good at. Don't try to be many things. We focus on manufacturing those technology fibers and nothing else. We take our fibers to third-party manufacturers to manufacture the final products. And once you do that, your headaches are far less. Okay, so sources of funding during our transition from the university to being a business. I spoke of the Innovation Hub. I'm going to speak about incubation in general. I think it's a key factor in developing businesses. We've got grant funding from corporates, such as South African Breweries Foundation. We've got loan funding from the IDC. I think we've got seed funding from TIA. And at a later stage now, we're starting to get venture capital funding. So, quickly speak about incubators. A lot of you, I think we'll need to debate about whether entrepreneurs are made or they are born. You know, I think that's a very big thing. I believe that entrepreneurs are made, and sorry? It's cut. I'm almost done there. So the Innovation Hub does help you realize your entrepreneurship side. And they help you, they have a growth wheel, they have an application called the growth wheel that helps to look at your business from a bird's eye view. And you can look at the different aspects of your business every quarter, and you score yourself. It's got 4 sectors, you score yourself, whether are you 25% complete or 50% complete. So every quarter when you do this growth wheel assessment with your incubator, you can see areas where you're lacking, and in those areas they can appoint mentors. And these mentors help you. Stuck. So mentors help you to give you a crash course on how to build those aspects where you're lacking. Could be marketing, could be sales, could be reporting on your finances and all of that. So do get mentors that can help you and give you a crash course. And they also help you psychologically, because it's a very hard thing to start a business. It's emotionally straining because they've gone through the journey themselves. They can always offer advice. So incubators also offer workshops that strengthen your knowledge around managing your business. You get subsidized office space, utilities, communal security, and bottom facilities. For example, if you want to buy equipment, a funder will say, what's the security in the place where you want to buy equipment? So this communal spaces really lower the cost of you starting a business. Finally, just want to end with a quote from this gentleman here, who now owns an application called X. He says, starting a company is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. If you feel like you are up for that, then start a company. So it is difficult, but I think the average person has the ability to start a company and turn it into a successful business. Thank you very much.
All right, so for the next 14 and a half minutes or so, I'm going to let our panelists lead a discussion. Just to give you some prompts, I think what people here would want to hear about, and you've now, all of you touched on the idea of failures as an entrepreneur, how investors might also be perhaps looking at a more experienced failure person to invest in, and why those failures are so valuable in the journey of entrepreneurship. And then because everybody here is really at the beginning stages of their specialization, where they want to go with entrepreneurship, and I think our lady here would be somebody who'd really want to lead that discussion in terms of entrepreneurs. You can't be good at everything.
Yes.
Can't be good at everything. And you said, there's a big debate already going on here whether entrepreneurs are made or whether they are born. I think she said leaders are born and not made. Yeah. So I think those are the two prompts I would have for you. I don't know if you want to start, Ginelo, and speak perhaps about my last point, and then I'll just assist where I can.
I think is this
the microphones, the lapel mics, thank you.
Yeah, I think we all can touch on that, which is probably the most important aspect. It's to tie in the law, and where I think the failures becomes the question of research. I think that's where you're going and what you'd like to look into. I'm not touching on this loosely, but we are in a democratic country that is governed by the Constitution. So in South Africa, we speak about a mixed economy, and that's very important in terms of the law interpretation and in terms of a public good, where we are all sitting here, the three of us, we are custodians of some sort of public good. So it is in the interest of the policies, the Constitution, the law that governs it, to say, what do we do with this public good in terms of the innovations we have? So in terms of the failures, they are market related. So when you look at entrepreneurship, we have to look at it from the state of are they born or are they made, and the necessity thereof. So in my case, I would speak of market failures that prevent entrepreneurship. And I speak of a journey of 5 years, and you also are almost close reaching to about 10 or 5 years.
About 6 years.
Yeah, where the monetary value has not been realized. And that, for me, is an infringement on the law. I don't sleep at night because I'm worried about the enforcement of the law, the policies. And so when we speak about incubations, we speak about it from a policy point of view. Why do they exist? Why do entrepreneurs exist? So the failures for me, if we're going to look at it from the individual, which is me sitting, or Mthokozis, it would be, it's my point of view, so it's a discussion, sorry, just to close it off. that if we look at it from an individual point of view and not the market failure, then we don't understand the holistic picture. So that's why I say entrepreneurs are not yet made. They are born in this context because the failures really don't correlate with the individual, but the broad market. And yeah, that's where I'd open up to why the law is then important where I'm sitting in terms of ensuring that there's some movement in our failures.
So if I can chime in, because I'm in some ways I'm the outsider here. So the first thing I want to say is that it's really nice to see these businesses that are starting and are developing. Being a lawyer is a little bit like being a doctor. Doctors never see healthy people, they only see sick people. Lawyers never see businesses that are going well, we only see when things go wrong. And I think you've touched on something here, that the issue of whether an entrepreneur is born or made is a little bit like asking whether somebody is tall or not. Being tall is partly a matter of, genetics, whether mom and dad were tall, but it's also partly a matter of whether you got enough food when you were growing up. So if I can give a really random example, I met your Japanese doppelganger years ago. I was lucky enough to travel to Japan. I went to Kyoto, which is it's a wonderful city there, and I met a lady who had started a cafe which was all buckwheat related. So she was also, I chatted to her about her story and everything. She'd been in university, she'd been studying buckwheat. She got fascinated by it, but the furthest she could go was to start a small business, a little cafe. And I'm not sure whether it ever took off in the same way. Your story is different. Same sort of people, same drive, same story. Yours has taken off more partly because of who you are as a person, but partly because of the context that you're in, that you were able to get some of that assistance. My understanding is that you dealt with the innovation hub here as well. Yes. That you guys you're actually neighbors.
Yeah, we are.
So that's the thing, is that there are, and as you said, they're not perfect. They're often under-resourced. They're often batting against a very well-developed market that's very, let's put it this way, they don't take kindly to competition. Yeah. And to be fair, no large business takes kindly to competition. But you at least have the access to certain resources that are available here, and through this institution, also through various government initiatives that I think help with the journey.
So my contribution would be humans have capacity to learn. That's the most important thing. As we go through the years, if you look at our history, the way people lived in the olden days and the way people live now, it's a huge change because people have learned from their experiences. And being an entrepreneur, I don't think most people get it right at the first shot. Very few entrepreneurs get it right. It's a process of trial and error, and you're going to fail. They say, I think 90% of startups fail within the first 5 years or something like that. Yep. It's a crazy figure. But it doesn't mean that if you fail, then you must give up. Because by failing, you learn how not to do something. And when you go back as a better person, and you do it better. For me, I've had periods where I've failed so much, I've sunk, you almost go close to depression, and you think you'll never rise up. But if you switch off for a while and switch on, you have this new knowledge that you didn't have before, that will guide you and reduce your failure going forward. You probably still fail again, but as the more you fail less and less and less. So I think if a lot of young people, I've got this belief that we in South Africa believe in just importing high technology. It's made in Germany, it's made in wherever, so it must be good quality, and we don't believe in ourselves. And I think the knowledge is amongst these young people. Don't just do your PhD to work for someone. Do your PhD, as the previous speaker said, keynote, to make a change. And to me, I think we can make a change in the knowledge economy by competing and building high growth businesses. But for you to do that, you have to fail, feel the pain, and wake up a better person.
Well, to your point as well,
Yeah.
the same stats that show that most businesses fail in 5 years and the survivors fail in another 5
Yeah.
also show that the stereotype of the successful businessman being a 20-year-old whiz kid who goes and makes it is wrong. The average successful business is started by a 30 or 40-year-old, not a 20-year-old. Yeah. The trick is just you have to start when you're 20 to become a successful.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to.
Kentucky started much later.
Much later.
Yeah. And just also the knowledge sharing.
Yeah.
I think that becomes a very important part in the innovation space, in the knowledge space. There's words like open innovation. I think those are terms, especially as African countries, South Africa, if we're going to advance, it is a time factor. I think we must put that into consideration. And with PhD writers, scholars, academia, the time factor is very important in business because a 5-year is short term, a 10-year is medium, a 15 is long term. So in terms of the practicality of it, a business that has failed in 5 years means it's wasted its short term, and meaning the long-term ramifications of that is then what happens. It's the breaking in chain. So I know sometimes we look at those as just mere writings, but in terms of when you look at it and on a practical level, what happens in the economy is some of the things we are seeing right now. So I think cases like ours should be looked at, should be studied, but they should have solutions. It shouldn't be a paper thing. It should be with the intention, the purpose, which is what is people, purpose, and performance. Performance is key because it speaks about the time and what is then done, so that we do have quality, because our papers, our universities show that there is knowledge. There is a lot of it. Technology transfer, when I was working there, I thought to myself, it's a gold mine, especially in the tech space. Yeah. I literally saw a gold mine. So in terms of the time to implement the performance, it becomes important so that we're not just stories or stats. There's something that is being done about our failures, as opposed to, oh, they failed, take a box and move on.
So we have 3 minutes left for our panel discussion. I think if each of you, very briefly, a minute each, could touch on this issue that Prof. Van Vieren also brought up earlier on, because these are your scholars here, they're the very beginning stage of their journey. That collaboration, where does one start? I'm doing an honors, I'm doing a master's, here's my topic. I'm just trying to get my topic approved. Don't come to me and tell me about entrepreneurship yet. I need to get my thing approved. I need to win the competition tomorrow. I need a job. And now you want to tell me that if I'm not multidisciplinary, it's not going to work out, and I'm 25, 27 years old. What's going on? So I think there are relevant points each of you could make in closing regarding where they are now and collaboration and my entrepreneur idea, my innovation. Do I have to know it all?
Thomas.
Okay. So I'm sure that any of you who've dealt with research know about the pub outside the university effect, which is this idea that if we really wanted to get universities to produce very high value, interesting research, and if we looked at what historically led to a lot of good research, it wasn't seminars and it wasn't workshops, it was the guys going afterwards and sitting in a pub together and the physicist sitting down with the biochemist and having a chat over a drink. That's part of it, is that you can try and manufacture the environment that results in collaboration, but at the end of the day, it is something of a spontaneous process, and it's something of a process driven by luck and chance to a certain extent, and I'd open myself up to that. I'd also say that that's a thing with businesses as well, is that there's an element of serendipity in businesses. They don't necessarily start because you attended a workshop. Although attending a workshop can be part of the process, you can't kind of jam people together and hope that things will come together. The people themselves need to go out and be open to what can happen to these experiences.
Yeah.
Definitely. I would encourage that. I think it's about breaking down your own prejudices, your own biases, and perceptions. Perceptions can be good or bad, but for you to, is it cross-pollinate? You need to be open to the process. It is luck and chance. I mean, in this room, you can click with someone or you naturally don't click with that person. But if you are not going to be open and actively look for those opportunities, they're not going to come. And I think it should be easier for people who are seeking knowledge. That curiosity should come naturally. But sometimes I think the environment should be conducive for it. So I would encourage, I think Prof did open or suggest that, but hold them to task as scholars and academia. Hold them to task to open up the doors. They do have the knowledge. I know he said you take them out for coffee, but they should be taking out some students for coffee. and I think we get to a level where it's not a thing you need to think about, it's something you need to actively do. It's everyone's responsibility. Yeah.
Okay, so to master's, PhD students or to postgraduate students, do not be afraid to collaborate. No one is going to create that link for you. Go onto the internet, search people, particularly overseas, particularly the Europeans. They are desperate for people from other countries, especially Africans, to come in and collaborate with them. For me, I approached the Department of Research. When I was doing my PhD, they gave me a scholarship, a bursary to spend 1 month in Germany. My stay in Germany, it was a disaster for that 1 month. I took a tour of Germany for the last week, the 4th week, and I went to Dresden, and I visited the Research Institute, and I made links just by talking to one of the researchers. 3 months down the line, he wrote me a letter to say, come and spend 3 months to retry your project here. The amount of work that I did in those 3 months will be equivalent to doing it here in 3 years, because there's so much capacity to achieve research. So look for those links. There is money at the university. There is money in those institutions to get foreign students to come in and collaborate, and you'll see your research flying.
Yes.
So that brings an end to this particular panel session. We are now going to enter into our panel session, and the chairperson of that is going to be Dr. Mdingi, who I am going to invite already to come up, and I'm going to say thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you for sharing your time, your knowledge, and your expertise. And anyone who's interested in getting their contact details, I think you can ask Mtugazi directly, and she will get you in touch with them. Please do buy their products and ask Thomas for legal advice. Advocate Baloyi, it's now been said by one of your own that there is money at the university. So don't sit at the back there, we can see you, and your product says there's money. So PhDs, there he is at the back in the corner there, and he apparently has a lot of money. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I'm Dr. Mdingi from the Department of Systematic Theology. I'm chairing the next session, which is around the added value of a postgraduate degree, a competitive advantage. Now, it's quite interesting that when you start studying for a particular qualification, you are exposed to a plethora of approaches or disciplines or what you call it, streams within a particular framework. But I think research becomes quite interesting once you start to branch off, because there comes in the space for specialization, and that is where the work actually begins, because you have to find your sort of like niche area in the broad stream that you find yourself in. But also important is that you then have to ask certain questions within the particular discipline or stream that one is choosing. So I do hope that our panelists will attempt to make us understand some of those things in terms of the value of a postgraduate degree. For me, I think there is absolutely added value in it because it does advance certain things in terms of knowledge production and various ways in which we use that knowledge for specific things. So I've got 3 panelists who will be joining us on stage. As per the list, the first one is Professor James Maina. I hope I'm pronouncing you correctly, Prof. Professor James Maina is the Deputy Dean Research and Postgraduate Studies in the Innovate faculty. He holds a PhD in Civil Engineering and M.Ing in Civil Engineering, as well as a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. He was appointed as professor at the University of Pretoria in 2014. Before joining the University of Pretoria, he worked at the CSIR as the Chief Research Engineer and Research Group Leader, having joined the CSIR in May 2005, and raising through the ranks to the position of Chief Research Engineer, a position he held at the time of his departure from the CSIR at the end of September 2014. Professor Maina was an adjunct professor in civil engineering at the Shanghai University in China from 2018 to 2021, and is currently appointed as the adjunct professor of civil engineering at the Shandong Jianzhong University, also in China. Between 2016 and between June 2016 and September 2017, he was seconded to ANAS SPA Qatar branch as the technical director and leading pavement expert for the QA and QC of road project as the state of Qatar prepared to host the FIFA Soccer World Cup finals in 2022. He also worked as the ANAS SPA Qatar branch as senior road pavement expert to the QA and QC project from May 2013 to September 2014, while on sabbatical leave from the CSIR. He is a member of the Academy of Science of South Africa, a fellow of the South African Institute of Civil Engineering, and a fellow of the South African Academy of Engineers, a registered professional engineer with an Engineering Council of South Africa, and a B-rated research with the NRF. So thank you, Prof. You're welcome. I will also be calling on stage Dr. Patience Mthunzi Kufa. Dr. Patience Mthunzi Kufa holds a PhD in physics from the University of St. Andrews in Scotland, in the United Kingdom. She is the research group leader for biophotonics, specializing in advancing point-of-care diagnostic. She has published several popular science papers, peer-reviewed journals, and conference articles, field invention disclosures, and postgraduate students. During September 2011, she was one of the only 4 outstanding young scientists selected by the Academy of Science of South Africa to attend and to participate in the IAP World Economic Forum Summer Davos Conference in Dalian, China. In April 2012, she was bestowed the Order of the Mampungukwe in bronze for her contribution in biochemistry and biophotonics by the former President Jacob Zuma, making her the youngest recipient of such an honor. Welcome, Doc. Last but not least, we have Dr. Vuisile Pehane. I hope I'm pronouncing you, Prof. Dr. Vuisile Pehane completed his doctoral studies at the University of Cape Town in the Department of Chemical Pathology, studying the inhibition of malaria purine salvage enzymes. His working career started at SA Bioproducts, Durban, South Africa, responsible for bioprocess development of amino acid production technologies. He later joined the CSIR as the process scientist in Biocatalyst Group of the Biotechnology Division. His work at the CSIR sparked an interest in technology management, in particular the commercialization of R&D outcomes. His stay at the Innovation Fund as program manager and then commercialization manager developed his skills in the evaluation, funding, management, and commercialization of technology, which was pursued further at BioPed, an initiative of the Department of Science and Technology as Industrial Biotechnology and Bioprocessing Portfolio Manager. Dr. Vuisile is currently the Senior Manager, Commercialization at the Agricultural Research Council of South Africa. He has served on the boards of a number of startup companies and has a keen interest in the licensing of technology as well as the creation of viable spin-outs based on solid R&D outcomes. So those are our guests today. I will give each of our panelists just about 10 minutes to give us their presentation. Then afterwards, we will then be able to engage with some of the things that would have been presented by our esteemed colleagues. So I'll start with you, Prof. Maine, you may have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so good day, everybody. It's always a pleasure from where I stand, especially talking to young people, aspiring researchers, to encourage you to think about going further with your research, with your studies. As Prof. Van Vuren indicated that when you do your master's, you have to be a master of the field within which you are specializing. So the expectation there is for you really to understand what you're doing and to be as independent as possible. As you progress to your PhD, the expectation there is then that you, because you understand the field really well, you will start thinking about the gaps, you will identify the gaps and generate new knowledge with confidence. Because I am where I am now, not because of any connections, not because of uncles and aunts and anybody, but because of the knowledge I got. Because that is something that nobody can steal from you. Nobody can take the knowledge from you. They can steal money from your pockets. They can steal money from your bank accounts. They cannot steal the knowledge you have. So, for context, postgraduate. So, postgraduate degree covers everything from postgraduate diplomas, where you are still upskilling yourself with knowledge, to master's degrees, where you become a master of the field where you want to specialize in, to doctoral degree where you now become a specialist. So essentially, any degree that requires an undergraduate bachelor's degree as an admission prerequisite can be considered a postgraduate degree. So that's the context. So the imperative of postgraduate degree, and remember, for example, South Africa and many countries, South Africa is transitioning towards knowledge-based economy. So the country will develop, will sustain its development based on the knowledge that will sit in the young generation of you guys. So you are what the country will, you will make or break this country, depending on whether you take your knowledge seriously, whether you push the envelope, the boundaries of technology, innovation, etc. And so the imperative of growth, the national goal to increase the annual numbers of masters and doctorate graduates has its origins in the 2001 Higher Education Plan. The transformation imperative clearly states that postgraduate education must become much more inclusive of race and gender than before, but there are no current target numbers, although if you look at the National Research Foundation funding, they've started slowly to putting targets. Female, black, previously disadvantaged groups, etc. But still the door is open, and the doors are open for anybody willing to learn and contribute to the generation of knowledge. So if we go back, the University of Pretoria's vision is to become the leading research intensive. So we can only become leading research intensive university if we have a critical mass of young people like you guys who are willing to go as far as possible with knowledge. And so, and I'll look at these from your personal point of view and the national point of view. So if we look at the national point of view, if you look at the second line there, or the second item, strengthen the research and international profile of the university, that is postgrad research and studies. And the last one, strengthen the social responsiveness and impact in society of the university. That can only come through new knowledge, new generation, using that knowledge that you guys will generate to address the social ills. So for example, there have been discussions in the previous talks that universities push publications, but we have started to change that narrative. We are encouraging our researchers to look beyond the publications, to look at the so what. Why are you doing what you're doing? Not only for the sake of research and the paper, but there should be some impact to the society. And the easier way to measure the impact is to use the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The research that you do addresses which of the 17 SDGs, because that is a language that anybody can understand. And we've been trying to do that in the Faculty of Engineering, Built Environment and IT. And these are just examples of the SDGs that we have been impacting on. SDG number 7, number 9, 11, 12, 13, 17, etc. And slowly we will keep on encouraging our researchers and through some of you guys who probably belong to ABIT to start thinking beyond just a publication. The so what impact to the society is your research focusing on? So that is from the social, economic, environmental point of view. But what about you guys yourselves? The value of postgraduate studies increases the career advancement opportunities, increases earning potential, improve critical thinking and problem-solving skills, improves personal development, creates special knowledge, creates networking opportunities, and access to university and industry resources. So even at your own personal level, there are a lot of benefits that you get by going through postgraduate studies, and numbers don't lie. So there are people who have done studies comparing, for example, master's degrees salary versus the bachelor's degree salary in US dollar terms, median weekly earnings for somebody with a master's degree, $1,300, bachelor's degree, $1,066. So even it impacts on your own pockets. How cool is that? You can impact the society around you, and through that process, your pocket also gets filled up. The university provides quite a lot of support to make sure you succeed in what you do. There's Graduate Support Hub, and all this information is available on the intraweb. The Postgraduate Scholarship Office, Fly Higher at UP program that assists you in figuring things out so that you can succeed in getting that paper, but also through that process, be the best version of yourself in terms of knowledge and impact to society, and also opening many doors to opportunities compared to if you had stopped only at the bachelor's degrees level. So, you have done the right decision. Should you stop at the bachelor's degree and go get employed, or should you go for higher education? And my honest, through the numbers, opinion is go for postgraduate studies and don't stop at master's. Don't stop at PhD. Go as far as possible. Postdoc, become an academic. Or you can go to institutions like the CSIR, get exposed to better research methodologies and what, and come back to the university and contribute even more to building a knowledge-based society. So thank you very much, and I wish you all the best.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Program Director, and thanks to the organizers for the invitation to come and engage the audience this afternoon. I did not prepare slides. I made that a conscious decision that I'm not gonna speak on slides because my experience with panels is that there's a chance talks will overlap. So to try and remain original, I thought I would share my journey, and maybe that would then take what Prof has just shared with you now and put it into practicals. So maybe just by listening into what my journey was, you will actually derive what the values of getting a postgraduate degree is, and also what competitive advantage does that give one. So I will actually start it from grade 12. Just after I matriculated, I wanted to become a doctor, but I think I wasn't proactive in preparing to become a doctor. So I ended up having to take a gap year. During the gap year, I spoke to one of my maths teachers who advised me that you can tutor maths and physics, but you can also study something with UNISA. At the time, UNISA was only a long-distance education institution, and I registered for a degree in psychology, and I did that 1 year in psychology. It had a lot of benefit, and it boosted me in understanding, how us as humans make decisions and all that, but I also knew that was not the journey I wanted to take. So I then, during that year, made proper preparations to go and study at a university where I will be a day student and where I will get to go to the lab and do practicals. So I applied for different institutions and I was accepted at the Rand Afrikaans University, not UJ, RAU. And I studied in Afrikaans because at the time, Natuur Wetenskappe was given in Afrikaans. That's natural sciences. So I did my undergraduate in Afrikaans, and I studied a BSc in biological sciences at the time. And following my undergraduate, I then decided I was gonna go for an honors degree. So in my mind, there was no like rush to saying immediately after my graduation with a BSc, I'm going to work. I decided to go for an honors. And I must say at the time, that was a very comfortable place to be in because I didn't have a family, I didn't have, financial burdens. So I then decided, okay, after my master's in biochemistry, I'm gonna do it was the honors, I'm gonna do my master's. So there was really no battle as to whether I'm going to stop here and then start working, because that's what I desire to do. Because as I say, at the time, it was a comfort zone for me because I was also working as a demi at the university and a student assistant, so there was a bit of income coming my way. And then following finishing my master's in medical biochemistry, I then decided, okay, this is the time for me to start working. And you would appreciate in the black families, I don't know if it happens in other tribes, but in the African community, when your mother takes you to university, you need to finish quickly and start working so that you can help the family and help your mother, your parents to support the rest of the family. So each time I would go for my graduation, my mother would be asked by family and friends, "Oh, your child is still studying. Auntie, when is she going to finish?" So it was a question year after year. After every graduation, my mom would be frustrated because she would be like, "But when are you going to start working?" So finishing my master's, I decided, okay, I'm going to start working now. And I worked at the NICD, that's the National Institute for Communicable Diseases. And at the time, I was on a contract. So I thought to myself, after all this time spent at university doing my master's and my honors and my undergraduate, I'm going to work as a contract employee. It didn't sit well with me. I wanted permanent employment and I wanted stability. So I left the NICD very quickly because the contract there was renewable on a yearly basis, and I thought, this is not the model that's going to work for me. So I looked for employment, and I got employment at 3 departments at the CSIR, so I needed to choose one. And I went for the National Laser Center. At the time, they were called the National Laser Center, and I was staying in Soweto, and they were based here in Pretoria. So my first year of employment was commuting, basically. And I started working there as a master's graduate, but during my interview, it was made clear that I was to start a program within the unit called Biophotonics. And for me to be able to achieve that, I needed to get a PhD. So you can see now already that just getting a master's and having a master's is not enough. You do have added value, but is it enough? No. So I needed to then register for a PhD, and I quickly then enrolled. And because there was no photonics laboratory within the country that could train me for a PhD, I had to look overseas, and that's how I ended up in St. Andrews. So fast forward, I got my PhD from St. Andrews, and then I came back. And I thought, okay, now I've got a PhD, but was that enough value add? I thought maybe not. But at the time as well, Prof did say when you have a PhD, you become specialist. It was a very nice position to be in, because now I could start a laboratory. Not only that, I was specialist to know what type of equipment was needed and what type of human capital to put in that space. So I slowly but gradually grew the biophotonics group within South Africa, and now we are in a position where we are a robust team that's working on making photonics-based diagnostics for applications in health, in the pharmaceutical industry, as well as in the agricultural industry. And following getting a PhD, I thought, okay, like the PhD is the peak in terms of the levels of being educated. You don't stop there, because now, as somebody who runs a lab, I then had to deal with the finances of running that space. I had to deal with how do you do operations. I had to do with management issues. I had to do with a plethora of other demands that were not in my space. So I found myself being a frequenter at GIPS. You know, like I studied a lot with GIPS as well. The work that I do is actually not at a low technology level. So you would have remembered from Dr. Sibanda's presentation, he spoke about technology development, you know, the TRL levels. So we don't do research only at fundamental level. Actually, if anything, I discourage such research. I want to do applied research that will lead into prototypes and productions of you know, different equipment that can then be used to create impact in societies. So because of that, you need to go and learn on how to do product development. So I've been to product development courses and all of that. So what I'm trying to say here is that it doesn't only end when you finish a PhD. There's still scope to study post-PhD. And right now, I'm in a space where I am responsible for getting funding for the group. I'm responsible for ensuring that we have different stakeholders. My responsibility also has to do with the generation of outputs, particularly patents. We've filed a number of those, and I'm glad that Thomas was here to talk about, you know, that space, because I found myself in a space where now I have to defend my work from a legal aspect as well, which also is, it requires a form of training. So, you know, you don't just stop when you get your PhD and become a specialist. You need to specialize in various other things. And you would also note that in my journey, I studied the biosciences at lower level, but at a higher level, I studied the physical sciences. Then that made me an interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary scientist. It's a very nice space to be in because I don't only get to talk bio, I talk physics, I talk mathematics, and that puts you at an advantage because you can then come up with a strategy, a research strategy that allows those that are under your leadership to actually benefit from your understanding of the different fields. Okay. The other thing that we are now working on are 2 prototypes that we are hoping to make products very soon, and these products would be in a form of one of them is in a form of a mobile phone that can be used to do diagnostics at particularly rural areas as well as peri-urban areas where healthcare in those areas is difficult to acquire. So you would just take a phone, a photo with the back camera of your phone. So we've made both novel software as well as hardware that has been put in a phone for a patient to just take a photo, and then that photo is sent via cloud to the doctor, who then informs the patient what they have. So you can use any bodily fluid for that kind of analysis. And what I also want to say is that the other thing I do right now is work with PhD as well as master's students. It's quite exciting because working with people always has got its own fair share of challenges. I would like to emphasize the point made by Professor Van Vuren earlier to say students need to work very closely with their supervisors. Mutual respect is very important when you are working with your supervisor. Choose somebody that you also are able to adapt very well with in terms of your character, because that relationship requires a lot of working closely together. So if there's going to be personality clashes, it becomes compromised. I've heard a lot of stories where people couldn't complete their postgraduates because there was some form of friction between themselves as well as their supervisors. So it's very important to manage that relationship carefully. I think I will stop there because I think, yeah, that's my time up now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I'd like to acknowledge the University of Pretoria for inviting me here today, and also to thank the organizers for this opportunity. I'm not going to try and compete with my esteemed colleagues on the panel here. I'm not yet a professor, but one day I'll probably be a professor. You know, my history is relatively short. I consider myself young. but a lot of what the colleagues have spoken about, I've experienced as well, just in terms of my career and the development of a particular career. And so, what I'd like to say to you colleagues is that it's very important that you understand that the path you've taken in terms of your careers in getting to this postgraduate level is a very deliberate one. In the 80s and 90s and so forth, when we were kids, having finished school around 1989, there were not nearly as many opportunities at that time as we have today. And so the country, reaching 1994, now becoming a country that's playing in the global, I suppose, environment, a lot of things were not in South Africa at that time, and a lot of things took a long time to get into South Africa. And so over the years, we've tried very hard to, in essence, change the country, to get the country to compete, as it were, with the rest of the world. And we've certainly come a long way as a country in all disciplines. So colleagues, where you are, as you'd know, your honors teaches you to look at literature and interpret results, basically. Your master's, in essence, a master of techniques, and those techniques you will use when you do your PhD, which in essence is the creation of new knowledge. There is no way you will graduate if that which you do in your PhD is not new knowledge. So we've seen some of my colleagues actually who started their PhDs, went for about 3 or 4 years, and the work they were doing was published before they graduated. All it means is that you start from scratch. It's as brutal as that, colleagues. So the trick is work quickly, as colleagues have said, work well with your supervisors, very, very important. And of course, scan the literature all the time to see where other people are publishing and what other people are doing. It's very, very important. And so people often ask me, Sophie, what does the PhD do for you? What is done for you? The whole purpose of the PhD is to teach you how to get to an answer. So I don't know the answer to very many things, although I've done many things. However, you can give me any question. I might not answer immediately, but what I can tell you is that I've gained the skills to know how to get to the answer, and I'll come back to you with an answer. Very, very important, colleagues. And so currently I work for the Technology Innovation Agency. This is an agency of the Department of Science and Innovation. We are created through an act of parliament, the TIA Act. What that means is that it's not easy to shut us down as an organization, but we fund innovation and we, in essence, occupy what we call an unrivaled space. Our role is to de-risk innovations that come to us. We fund things that other people don't want to fund because the risk is very high. And we de-risk so that these innovations are now becoming available to other people who can come in with their money. Whether it is venture capital, private equity, it matters not who it is. Other people are not interested in these innovations unless they've been sufficiently de-risked. That is our role as TIA. And so in the space that we work in, particularly myself in the life sciences, we deal with scientists, we deal with engineers, and we deal with academics. And that is because we fund science councils, higher education institutions, and SMMEs. But these people very quickly sit in front of you, and they want to know from the first few sentences what you know. And so, by studying past your graduate degrees into postgraduate degrees, it allows you to sit in front of other academics, other innovators, and engage in a sensible way with them. Very quickly, people know what you know, and they tend to undermine you less. And they start listening to you and taking advice in terms of some of these innovations. They start to respect your decisions. Very important. So at the university, we like to think of universities as being entrepreneurial universities. And so what this means is different to different people, but we're looking for those universities in the country that recognize that not all graduates will get jobs when they leave university. That is a fact. We certainly understand the challenges we have as a country in terms of unemployment, which is why we have very many unemployed graduates and even postgraduates sitting at home doing nothing. Or they are in jobs doing things they have not studied for. We certainly want to see universities now engaging with the private sector. In other words, those universities, such as yourselves, that have mastered the art of collaborations with private sector are those that are in essence attractive to funders such as myself, but also to people who want to commercialize that which comes out of universities such as University of Pretoria. So all of these things that we speak about, R&D collaborations, companies that come and invest in universities, all of those are very deliberate. Because what this means is that the university, with what it chooses to do, has found itself being attractive to private sector. And so as you go out, colleagues, as you move between different institutions, it's very important, by the way, not to stay at one university, but to move to different universities as you go up your career ladders, is to think about the universities, understand those universities that have strong collaborations with industry. The chances of being employed, if you want to be employed, are greater. However, entrepreneurial university also makes it possible for you to think about incubation, intellectual property management, what industry actually wants. And all of those things should actually influence the type of project that you do because you're targeting a specific industry. Those innovations you study, and what you come up with is what we will fund. Why? Because we know, as Technology Innovation Agency, that that will be taken up by industry, and that will in essence contribute to our economy, which is what we're all about as an organization. And so, colleagues, when you think about what you do and what you're studying, engage, as the Prof said, with the different support structures of university, but also importantly, think about your technology transfer office. The rules, I suppose, and the rules of engagement with Tech Transfer Office are laid out for yourselves to understand, but make sure that you're close to your Tech Transfer officers, because it is those officers and those officers that understand the link between what you're doing and what industry wants. So those disclosures they talk about, engage colleagues, those are disclosures that result in patents. It is those patents and that knowledge that you create here that allows you as an individual to now go out and start your own companies. It's a daunting task. We're all afraid of it. We prefer to go into that comfortable space where you will get a job simply because of the way we've been socialized. But the opportunities are becoming more and more for students to come out of universities and now create their own jobs. The NRF going forward will be thinking about partnering with people like ourselves to support students with their own projects to get out of universities and start their own jobs. What this means is that you should be thinking about that, colleagues, as you work in laboratories to say, if I suddenly found that I'm unemployable for whatever reason, will I be able to take that which I'm working on and actually start my own company? And so part of what we ask universities to think about is their own skills and the capacities in these tech transfer offices to in essence help you as students to get your technologies out there. So engage with the tech transfer officers, colleagues, to understand what they know about the ability to translate, we call it translation, of R&D outputs into commercializable products. If that skill is not there in the university, make sure you make noise about it because it becomes very, very important as you think about your own careers. So when you go out there and start your own companies, understand that there is support for people who have started their own companies through people like us, the Technology Innovation Agency, and various other government departments. And so, some skills you need to learn, what it means to actually put out a patent, why you should protect your work before you publish it, the kinds of skills you have in your own company, people that actually understand, have done the work around taking products to the market. This becomes very important. We've seen examples coming out of places like Oxford University, where in their tech transfer offices, they have up to 30 people that actually come from industry. It means those people are expensive for the university, but they're respected even by big business out there because they've been there and they're known within the private sector. So in conclusion, colleagues, I think, as I've said, the opportunities are there for you to think about your own careers. As I said, it is no mistake, no accident that you are where you are. It actually shows and demonstrates resilience because even people wanting to put money into your companies are looking for resilience. We look for the jockey. So the technology might not be so great, but if the person that is linked to that technology, that is associated with technology, is a good jockey, we we certainly want to fund those opportunities. So use the opportunities, colleagues, engage with the university, engage with different universities, exploit collaborations, exploit partnerships, because ultimately we're learning very quickly as a country that nothing is possible without these partnerships, without these collaborations from all over the world. Thank you, colleagues.
Thanks a lot from our colleagues. I think a lot has been shared, which is very important, which I think the students or researchers, future researchers can take away. One, of course, coming from Prof. Mayin is that get the paper to get the paper at the end of the day, you know. I was told that I can actually open it up for a few Q&As. My question perhaps to colleagues would be, you know, there's a view that has come up about the sociology of knowledge, how knowledge should in some sense play a role in society, and I think all of you have briefly touched on it. But I think it would be nice also to try and, you know, some of us when we were studying, we had very bad lecturers, and I didn't study at UP, so it's not UP's fault. So we had bad lecturers who actually discouraged us from pursuing our studies. I was told particularly that, what do you think you're going to contribute, you know? And I was told by the dean of that particular institution. But I suppose because I was a troublemaker, maybe that's why. But yeah, I think it's quite important that students do know that there is something that they can contribute to society far beyond just getting the qualification and so forth. So I'd want to hear your take on that. But I will open up the floor just for a few minutes. I'm told that we should be out here by 1:45 because there's lunch. So yeah, that would be my startup. But for those who've got questions, please raise your hands and address your questions to our colleagues.
Okay. Is it on now?
Yeah.
Okay. So thanks for that question. I actually share a similar experience where a physics professor told me that black people cannot see in 3D, and yeah, so I'm wasting my time doing physics. And this is why I dropped physics and actually pursued the biosciences when I was in my undergraduate, because I was told that. But be that as it may, I have a PhD in physics, not even from South Africa, from a country that never looked at me as black, and maybe it's because of affirmative action that I need to get a physics PhD, but due to merit, you know, when you are out there overseas, and this is why I would like to also encourage the postgraduates to pursue any international opportunities, please do, because it opens your mind to various other things about the country, about yourself, about your program. So, you know, when you're out there, you are not judged as a female or the color of your skin. You are judged as merit. What are you giving out? So, you know, as unfortunate as the experience was, you actually manage to get yourself out of that dark hole because you can see that there are people that can also support you. So yeah, unfortunately it happened, and fortunately here I am now. When it comes to knowledge, I would say young people are quite vibrant. They are flexible, and they can sort of like see things in a different way. I see it with the students that I work with now. The way they apply different technologies to actually study a particular topic is quite fascinating. So I would say, you know, don't sell yourself short in thinking that you cannot contribute something that's valuable, because there's always an opportunity to do that. Young people know how to be creative. So from where I'm experiencing things, you can definitely add some value with the knowledge that you can create as a young person. So please don't look down on yourself, and just choose to avoid and put ear stoppers to those negative comments, because you'll get a lot of them. Okay, I think I'll stop there for now.
So thank you very much. I think your question really speaks to a discipline or interest, a sector called social entrepreneurship. In essence, asking the question, when we do things in our laboratories, who's going to benefit from this socially? And I can tell you now that the more obvious it is what you're doing, that there is a social benefit, that many people are going to benefit from that which you're doing in your laboratories, in your innovations, the more, I suppose, attention you're going to be attracting from funders and partners. And so when we think of Facebook, that social entrepreneurship, many people have identified this tool to communicate and do all sorts of things on that particular tool. When we speak around some of the innovations coming from our colleagues in agriculture, who are looking at plants now that are resistant to disease, or seeds that germinate very quickly, etc., etc. All of those things speak to benefits. And so think about those things as you're studying. Who's going to benefit from that which I'm working on? It even extends to things like the drugs that we deal with. When I was a student, just to share my story, my supervisor said to me, you will never come up with a drug for malaria. And I thought it was the most racist thing to say. I was offended by it, but it turns out that it was true. Simply because, as you know, drug development takes billions of rands, it takes time, and of course, in South Africa at that time, there still isn't anybody who's actually manufacturing some of these drugs. We import 100% of our active pharmaceutical ingredients. So this is something that still faces us, colleagues, which is why we support innovations, we fund innovations. This we must do ourselves as a country, but also as a continent. We all know what happened with the vaccine story around COVID and so forth. That is simply because even though we've had many Africans leaving the continent, going overseas, they've either stayed overseas or they've come back and not found those opportunities to, in essence, apply that which they've learned on the African continent. The Chinese think differently to us, and so do the Indians. And so there's absolutely nothing stopping us as Africans from actually innovating for ourselves and doing things for ourselves as Africans. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think a simple answer from me is, and this is from my own personal experience, is as long as you have mastered your area of specialization, you've become a specialist in your area, then nothing should stop you from attempting to improve the quality of life for the society where you live in. I remember I did my postgrad studies in Japan. And then when I finished, I was offered a position there. And my first question to the Japanese, I'm a civil engineer, I'm a highway engineer. So my question was, after I started using the methods that they were using, I could find problems. And I knew I had tools to improve things. Irrespective of that I'm coming from Africa, I'm coming from poor place, etc., it did not matter because I knew I was knowledgeable. And I asked them, they said, no, we got this from the US. So what? No, we cannot change this unless you want to change. And I said, yes, I want to change it. They said, okay, go for it. This is more than 20 years ago, and they're still using my method. Because then they could see the tools have got nothing to do with race, have got nothing to do with who did it, as long as you address the need. There's a demand for it, people will take it and use it. So and then publications will follow, because you have identified gaps. Through the gaps, you'll write papers, etc. But that writing papers should not be your ultimate objective. Your ultimate objective should be addressing the needs that you identify out there to fill the gaps. And then if you succeed, all those publications will follow. So go for the knowledge, be as knowledgeable and as confident as possible, and then the rest will follow.
All right. Are there any questions, comments from students? I can't see, I'm a bit blind. Yeah, there's one question. Do you have a mic there for him? Sorry, sorry. Can you please state your name and maybe what you are also studying for?
My name is Nsamu. I'm doing an interdisciplinary study in health, arts, and behavioral sciences. And I'm curious about the value add of postgraduate within that particular space, because quite a lot of the studies are in STEM, and I'm wondering about the value add for the intersection of behavioral sciences, behavioral economics, and health, particularly on the continent of Africa, where, as you mentioned, we have so many competing interests in the area of health, and one of which is adherences and responses and response design for our population.
All right, thanks a lot. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, Doc. This looks like it's yours.
So for me, multidisciplinary topics are actually quite exciting because you don't actually view at the problem in a single dimension. You can come with different knowledge from the different disciplines to actually come up with a solution for something. So in your question, where you're talking about behavioral studies, I believe that any studies that mix, I did mention earlier that I did some form of studies in psychology. I think it helped me a lot in understanding human behavior. Right now, it's quite important for any studies that address human behavior, and especially if they are in a multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary nature, because of things like, think of what happened following the lockdown and people isolating themselves. There was a lot of mental health issues that became a problem, and such has not really been properly understood previously because we've never been in that space, especially not as intense as we are now. So your field, especially if it's multidisciplinary, can help in resolving and understanding further how we can help the current situation where mental health issues are such a big problem. So I would just leave it at that for now to say, I don't see it as a limitation. If anything, I think it's a necessity, particularly in the position we find ourselves in now. Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks. Doc, do you want to say something as well?
Just from the engineering perspective, I think, ask yourself, what difference can I make to the field where I am? Be proactive to bring in a different perspective, a different angle at looking at issues. Because do not wait for somebody to tell you that, or to come to you and say, can you help? Be proactive from the knowledge that you have, identify how can you make a difference. And I think this is where you will be enjoying what you're doing, because you will identify a lot of gaps within different fields that you will see that there is value in what you have studied, and you can also contribute to making a difference.
So very quickly, sir, you're on the money as far as the convergence of technologies, convergence of knowledge is concerned. You know, some time back, we had an issue just around the pressure coming from the consumer, where people were coming up with HIV diagnostic tests. And the market opened up for those diagnostic tests to be made available to individuals in your home. But of course, there was great pushback as where that was concerned, because the concern was, if I'm in my house, in my bedroom, and I've been naughty for some time, whatever it is, and I test myself for HIV and I find out that I'm HIV positive, who's going to be there to counsel me? That then very quickly translated into apps now that people are now developing, and of course, you know, with funds getting into the IT space, particularly venture capital funds, as you know, on the African continent is very big in countries like Nigeria, Kenya, and so forth. and less so for South Africa. We're finding now that apps are now being developed to assist people that have a component of psychology to be able to understand. In other words, that counseling that you're getting from people sitting across the table from you when you do HIV tests is now available on your phone. And so the kind of work that you're doing, as I say, you're on the money. There are apps being developed all the time, trying to get, to people in their private homes, in their private sectors, and find that the application of technology is still beneficial, even in the private sector, in your private home. So you're on the money, so we can talk about that a bit later if you like.
All right, anybody else? There's a question there at the back. Please state your name and what you're studying. I think you'll be our last person to ask the question because we should be out here at 12:45, so we are left with 2 minutes.
Hi everyone. My name is Atengosi Nzala. Currently doing my PhD in computer integrated education. Really want to first thank the speakers for the knowledge that they've brought, as well as the different experiences as well. They have been quite helpful to me. And in terms of how I think, my background is more around civil engineering like Prof. And then I moved into the ed tech space. And I think part of the added value of my degree is the one that's been allowing me not to only just think about social impact, but to think about how can I commercialize the actual degree that I'm doing, or how can I use the knowledge to actually impact people and still add value to the economy. My question is around the competitive advantage, but I wanted to check with anyone who can be able to answer the question around what do you think about the impact of interfaculty and interdisciplinary collaborations, the impact on a competitive advantage with regards to a postgraduate degree. Like for instance, myself, I've met with engineers, I've worked with engineers, but then now I've been in a space where I've been with people who think differently to engineers, and that has helped me to think and get on a table and rather become quite different in terms of my application of skill sets. So I want to know, has there been such an experience from your side in terms of experiencing an impact on the competitive advantage of a postgraduate degree, especially when it comes to interfaculty and interdisciplinary collaborations?
Please, colleagues, can you answer the question, but a bit brief as we're closing.
So a quick response to that. We had a problem from the agricultural people, especially the ones who were dealing with tomatoes, avocados, etc. And the problem was the shelf life of such produce. Civil engineers, transportation engineers, we came up with a solution, coming up with sensors, working with colleagues from electrical electronic engineering, sensors that capture the vibration of the trucks that transport, for example, tomatoes from the farms to the market. That helped to increase the shelf life by addressing the problem on the quality of roads, etc. I'm going to be very brief. And increase the shelf life from 3 days to about 9 to 12 days, meaning that you increase the money to the pockets of all the farmers, etc., etc. So yes, multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary is the way to go, because you address a problem by looking at it from very different angles, and you get a holistic solution to a problem.
So my answer would be very much to the lines of what Prof has just said now. Also in my space, if you would remember when I was talking, I said, I didn't just stop studying at a PhD level, because you will see in the field that as you progress, you get to a point where you need to be understanding things from a commercial aspect. You need to understand your work from a financial perspective. You need to understand your work from a managerial perspective. So all those things require you to be somebody that doesn't just stick to what you're a specialist on, but to stretch yourself into understanding other disciplines. So that would be my answer.
Very quickly, sir, I can see the way you're looking at me, so let me say it very quickly. So keep on collaborating. These interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary disciplines are very, very important. It becomes more important where you're now wanting to be recognized internationally. And that is because your funding opportunities like Horizon 2020 Eurostars, I've sat on a Eurostars evaluation panel as an expert evaluator of applications. And what we found was that the inability for an African opportunities to be taken seriously by Europeans was simply because of the lack of collaboration. And so by collaborating with many more people, what that does is opening you up for opportunities to collaborate with others. So people look to us to collaborate with us if we have shown that we can collaborate with other people. By doing what you're doing, you in essence have access to other laboratories that have specialist equipment that's in essence very often the subject of a particular call, specifically from Horizon 2020 and so forth. So keep on doing it and do more of it, and I certainly encourage it within the university.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Prof. Maine. Thanks, Doc.
Sorry, I'm overriding, but I think I get what the two are talking about, in that, you know, as a university, we always say transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, but also when you look at the way we are structured, this is a faculty of education only on this campus. Faculty of Health Sciences is in its own, on the Princehof campus, and veterinary science up north. But I think the session after lunch will have a representation from the transdisciplinary platforms that we do have, but also want your ideas, you know, with you being at the coalface, as to how we can facilitate, I should rather say facilitate, because I think, you know, we always try to think of having get-togethers and spaces at different campuses, but then people don't, you know, you'll find it's always one particular group, and it is something we struggle with, so really look forward to your ideas. That's all I wanted to say. And then just the last thing, it's also about collegiality and conducting research responsibly, ethics. I think those are key things that one gets out of being a postgrad student. Thanks.
All right, thanks a lot, colleagues. Can you please give them a round of applause? I'm not sure about lunch, but I'm sure the colleague that side will give us direction. Thanks.
So my topic is the one that is the best topic of the day. I'm going to tell you about lunch. So we are going to break now until 1:30 for lunch. And then please make your way back so that by 1:25, because we also don't want to keep you here forever, please be seated and return there by 1:25 so that Dr. Hart can chair the next session. And lunch is also in the normal cell, hey, so where we had our snacks earlier on. Thank you so much for being so attentive. We may go and eat, and the last one eating has to wash all the dishes. So let's go.